You do not own anything here anymore. You better pack your bags right now." With that harsh and icy voice, my own daughter-in-law, Linda, kicked the door open that morning. "Linda, what are you talking about?" I asked, feeling like the air was leaving my lungs. My son appeared behind her, not daring to look at me. "Mom, we sold the house. Mr. Robert is already on his way." I was watering my geraniums on the porch when I saw a stranger walking up the steps of my house with a folder in his hand. My heart raced when I realized that my daughter-in-law, Linda, was by his side, smiling and gesturing as if she were the owner of everything there. "Mrs. Emily, this is Mr. Robert Henderson," she said to me with a voice that was too sweet, too fake. "He came for the house keys, for a moment. I thought I was having a nightmare." This was the house I built brick by brick alongside my late husband Michael, where I raised my son Daniel, where I lived 40 years of my life. When I managed to process what was happening, my voice came out like a whisper. "What keys? What are you talking about?" It was then that my son appeared in the doorway, avoiding my gaze, moving his hands nervously. "Mom, we sold the house. You are going to live with us now." His words hit me like lightning. I stood there, holding the watering can, watching that stranger examine my living room, my kitchen, my patio where I planted every single tree. Linda walked up and whispered in my ear, "It is better that you accept it once and for all, because the papers are already signed. It is just a house." Mrs. Emily, just a house, as if she could reduce a whole life to bricks and cement. The man took the keys from Linda's hands as if it were the most natural thing in the world. My grandson Justin came running from school and shouted, "Grandma, why are there strangers here?" Nobody answered him. Daniel finally looked at me and said, "Mom, you understand. Right. We need the money. Besides, you are already too old to take care of such a big house alone. It is just a house." "Mom, too old." The words echoed in my mind while I watched Robert Henderson examining every room of the house where I built all my dreams. I sat in the rocking chair on the porch, the one Michael had made for me with his own hands 30 years ago, and I watched how that stranger walked through my home as if it were already his. Linda showed him the closets, explained how the washing machine worked, pointed out the leaks that needed repair. She spoke of my house with such familiarity that anyone would think she had lived here her whole life, when in reality she only came on Sundays for family meals, always complaining about something, that it was too hot, that the furniture was too old, that the bathroom needed remodeling. "The lady has taken very good care of the property," Linda told the buyer. As if I were the gardener of the house and not the owner, but you know how elderly people are. They cling too much to things from the past. Daniel nodded from the door, with that nervous smile he used when he knew he was doing something wrong, but tried to convince himself that it was necessary. It was the same expression he had when he was a child and broke something, hoping I would not notice. Robert Henderson seemed like a decent man. He approached me with respect and said, "Ma'am, I am very sorry that you have to leave your home. If there is anything I can do to make the transition easier." Linda interrupted him quickly. "Do not worry. Mr. Henderson, Mrs. Emily is already very happy to move in with us." "Right. Mrs. Emily." I stayed silent. I did not know what to say. Everything had happened so fast that my mind still could not process the reality. That morning I had woken up in my own house, and now a stranger had the keys to my life. "Mom." "Let us go inside so you can pack your things," Daniel said to me, taking me by the arm. His hands were sweaty and trembling slightly. I knew he was nervous, but I did not understand why. If he really believed this was the best for me, why did he look so guilty? We walked toward my bedroom, where they had put 3 cardboard boxes on my bed. "Linda bought the boxes," Daniel explained. "We thought that with this it would be enough for your personal things. The furniture is included in the sale. The furniture included in the sale. My mahogany wardrobe that Michael had bought for our first anniversary. The dresser where I kept the family photos. The dining table where we had celebrated all of Daniel's birthdays. All included in the sale, as if they were objects without history, without memory, without a soul." "And my plants?" I asked. Daniel sighed. "Mom, in the apartment there is no space for all those pots. You can take 1 or 2, the smallest ones, 1 or 2 plants. Out of the 50 I had cultivated for decades, each one had its history. The one my friend Rose gave me when Justin was born, the one I saved from a terrible frost, the one I planted the day Michael turned 60. But for Daniel, they were just plants, objects that occupied unnecessary space. I sat on the edge of my bed and tried to process everything. In a single afternoon, I had lost my house, my furniture, my garden, my independence, and according to my own family, I should be grateful for it. Linda entered the bedroom with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "Mrs. Emily, I prepared the room that is going to be yours in our house. It is tiny but very comfortable. Next to the laundry room. You are going to be very peaceful there. Next to the laundry room, the noisiest room in the house, where they put everything they did not know where to place. And I already explained to Justin that he has to behave well with his grandma," Linda continued. "Although, of course, you're going to help with the housework. Right, so you do not feel useless." So I do not feel useless. The phrase hurt me more than I expected. For 40 years I had been the owner of my own home. I had made my own decisions. I had lived according to my own rules. And now I was going to become a permanent guest in my daughter-in-law house, helping with the chores to earn the right to have a roof over my head. Daniel kept avoiding my gaze, busy checking the contents of my drawers, deciding what was important enough to deserve a place in the 3 cardboard boxes. "Mom, where are the important papers? The ones for the house. Dad will." "Those things." His question alerted me. "What do you need them for?" Daniel exchanged a quick glance with Linda. "Well, to have everything in order. You know, for the paperwork." Something in his tone made me suspicious. Michael had always told me to keep those papers in a safe place, that they were very important. I had them in a small safe that he had installed behind the wardrobe. "They are stored away," I told them simply. "I will bring them later." While I packed my dresses in the first box, I remembered the day Michael and I bought this land. It was a vacant lot full of weeds on the outskirts of town, but he saw something I could not see. "Here we are going to build our home. Emily," he had told me, taking my hand in his, "a house where our children grow up happy and where we grow old together." It had taken us 5 years to finish building it, working on weekends, saving every dollar, carrying bricks and mixing cement with our own hands. Michael worked as a bricklayer during the week, and on Saturdays and Sundays he built our house. I washed other people's clothes to gather money for the materials. Daniel was little then, maybe 7 or 8 years old, and he helped us by carrying the lightest tools. "When I grow up, I'm going to live here forever," he used to tell us, "and I'm going to take care of my parents when they are old." How ironic that now, when I really needed to be taken care of. He was kicking me out of the house we built for him. The noise of the laundry reached my bedroom. Linda had put a load of clothes in, and the sound of the spin cycle made the walls vibrate. "You are going to have to get used to that little noise," Daniel told me, noticing my expression. "But well, at your age you must not sleep so deeply anymore." Right. At my age. Another reference to how old I was, to how little my comforts mattered anymore. My needs, my preferences. It was as if upon turning 70, I had lost the right to have my own opinions. I folded my blue dress, the one I used for special occasions, and put it in the box. Michael had given it to me for our 20th anniversary. "You look beautiful in that color," he had told me, like the sky on a clear day. Now that dress was on its way to a room next to the laundry, in a house where I would be tolerated out of charity, where every bite I ate would be a favor they were doing me. When had I stopped being a mother to become a burden? When had Daniel decided that my well-being was less important than the money from the sale Linda returned with a broom and started sweeping under the bed? "We have to leave everything nice and clean for the new owner," she commented. The new owner. As if I had never existed in this house, as if 40 years of life could be erased with a broom. She found a shoebox under the bed and opened it without asking my permission. It was full of letters that Michael had written to me when we were dating. "Oh, What things Mrs. Emily keeps. These old letters are useless now. She snatched the box from my hands before I could protest. What are you going to do with so much yellowed paper? Those yellowed papers were the only physical proof I had left that I was once loved, desired, courted. They were the words Michael had written to me when he worked in another city and missed me. Letters where he promised me that we would build a life together, that we would be happy, that we would grow old surrounded by the love of our children. How wrong we had been. I want to keep those letters. I told them firmly. Linda sighed dramatically. Okay, but only a few. We do not have space for so many old things. A few love letters from 40 years of marriage. That was the portion of my history that my daughter-in-law considered acceptable. Daniel continued checking drawers and suddenly stopped. He had found my savings book, the one I kept in secret, where I saved the money from the rent of the small apartment Michael had left me in the center of town. For years I had been gathering that money, dollar by dollar, for any emergency. It was my security, my peace of mind, my economic independence. And now Daniel had it in his hands, flipping through it with his eyes wide open. "Mom, where did all this money come from?" His voice had changed. It no longer sounded guilty. It sounded accusatory, as if I had committed a crime. "It is my savings," I replied simply. Linda approached immediately, trying to see over her husband's shoulder. "How much is in there?" Daniel continued, turning the pages of the book. "There is more than $300,000 here." "Mom, why had you not told us? Why should I have told them that money was mine, the product of my work and my sacrifices?" But the look in Linda's eyes told me everything I needed to know. She was already calculating how to spend that money. She was already planning what they were going to invest my savings in. "Mrs. Emily, how good that you have that little money saved up, so you can contribute to the household expenses. Supporting an elderly person is expensive. You know, an elderly person." I was not even Justin grandmother or Daniel mother anymore. I was simply an elderly person representing expenses, problems, inconveniences. I snatched the book from Daniel's hands and put it in my purse. "That money is mine," I said with a firmness that surprised myself. Linda and Daniel looked at each other, clearly annoyed. "Of course, Mom. Nobody says it is not yours," Daniel said with that condescending voice adults use to talk to spoiled children. "But you're going to live with us now, so it is natural that you contribute to the expenses." Natural. As if it were natural for a mother to have to pay for the right to live with her own children. Mr. Henderson knocked on the bedroom door. "Excuse me, I finished checking the house. Everything is in order." He handed an envelope to Daniel. "Here is the rest of the payment, as we agreed." Daniel opened the envelope and counted the bills with a smile he had not shown all day. It was the smile of someone who had just solved his financial problems by selling his mother's house. Linda peeked over to see the money and whispered, "With this, and what Mrs. Emily has saved, we can remodel the kitchen. With this, and what I have saved." They had already decided how to spend my $300,000. They had already planned my future without consulting me. It was as if I were a minor who needed guardians to make decisions. Daniel put the money in his wallet and looked at me with that expression he used when he thought he was being generous with me. "Mom, with all this money, we are going to be very comfortable. You are not going to worry about anything. We are going to take care of everything. We are going to take care of everything, including my savings." Apparently. I sat on the edge of my bed, watching how these two strangers planned my life as if I were not present. Mr. Henderson approached me and said in a low voice, "Ma'am, if you need help with anything, here is my card." Linda interrupted him immediately. "Do not worry. Mr. Henderson, Mrs. Emily is going to be very well taken care of with us." But something in the man look told me that he had noticed the same thing as me. That this was not a normal situation, that something was very wrong. When I finished packing my 3 cardboard boxes, I sat in the rocking chair on the porch for the last time. Justin had arrived from school and was playing in the yard, oblivious to what was happening. He was my grandson. I loved him with all my heart, But even he had inherited his parents' dismissive attitude toward older people. Last week I had asked him to help me reach a book from the high shelf, and he had answered me, "Oh, Grandma, why do you not ask someone younger? Someone younger," as if I were so useless that I did not deserve his help. Daniel loaded my boxes into the car, 3 cardboard boxes. That was my whole life, according to him. 40 years of memories, photographs, beloved objects, love letters, reduced to 3 boxes that fit in the trunk of a car. Linda supervised the operation with that efficiency she demonstrated when organizing things in the house. She was good at organizing when it came to getting rid of other people things. "Everything is ready." "Mrs. Emily, are you not forgetting anything important?" Yes. I was forgetting something important. I was forgetting my dignity, which had been left scattered all over the house along with the dry leaves of my plants. I was forgetting my independence, which had died the moment I saw that stranger with the keys to my home. I was forgetting my right to be treated as a human being, with feelings, with memory, with history, but those things did not fit in cardboard boxes, so I supposed I would have to leave them behind. I got into the car without looking back. If I turned to see my house one more time, I knew I was going to break completely, and I could not let Daniel and Linda see me cry. That would be giving them too much satisfaction during the ride to her house. Linda did not stop talking about how well we were all going to get along, how useful it was going to be to have a grandma at home to take care of Justin, how happy Michael would be if he could see us all living in harmony. Michael, my late husband, who had worked like an animal for 40 years to build that house I had just lost. Michael, who had promised me that I would always have a home. Michael, who had trusted that Daniel would take care of me when he was no longer around. What would he think if he knew that his son had sold the house we built together to buy his wife happiness? What would he say if he knew that his grandson considered me too old to deserve a favor? We arrived at Daniel House. It was nice, modern, with a well-kept garden and a 2-car garage. They had bought it with a bank loan when they got married, and I had been the one who gave them the down payment. $20,000 of my savings so my son could have a decent house for his family. Now that house was going to be my home, my shelter, my prison. Linda showed me my room with pride, as if she were doing me the biggest favor in the world. It was indeed small, with a twin bed, an old nightstand, and a mirror with damp spots, next to the wall shared with the laundry room. "Do you like it?" "Mrs. Emily, I put clean sheets and everything. Do you like it?" As if I had a choice, as if I could say I did not like it and look for alternatives. That was my reality now, being grateful for the crumbs of comfort they gave me in my own family. Daniel put the 3 boxes in a corner of the room. "Tomorrow you can organize your things. Mom, now let us go have dinner. Let us go have dinner, the first dinner in my new life, where I would be the permanent guest." But what they did not know, what they had not considered in all their perfect plans to dispose of my life, was that I had more resources than they imagined, and above all, I had more strength than they believed. That night, lying in that strange bed, listening to the constant noise of the laundry, I made the most important decision of my 72 years of life. I was not going to be a victim of my own family ambition. I was not going to allow them to treat me like a disposable object. And definitely, I was not going to hand over my savings to fund Linda whims the next day, while they slept. I was going to start changing the rules of the game, because it turns out that being old did not mean being stupid, and it definitely did not mean being helpless. Daniel and Linda had made the biggest mistake of their lives. They had underestimated Emily Hope, and now they were going to discover exactly who I really was. The first night at Daniel House was the longest of my life. The noise of the washing machine did not stop until 2 a.m, and when I finally managed to fall asleep, the motor of the refrigerator on the other side of the wall woke me up every hour. At 5:30 in the morning, Linda was already making noise in the kitchen, preparing Daniel breakfast before he went to work. The smell of coffee reached my little room, but nobody told me it was ready. I got up and went out in my robe to the kitchen. Daniel was finishing breakfast reading the newspaper, and Linda was washing the dishes. "Good morning," I said softly. Daniel looked up for a second and mumbled something resembling a greeting before returning to his reading. Linda looked me up and down. "Oh, Mrs. Emily. You are up already. I thought older people slept more." Older people. Again, that category that seemed to include me in a special group of human beings with different needs and schedules. "Is there coffee?" I asked. Linda pointed to the coffee maker with her head. "Sure. Help yourself. And since you are awake, can you help me make the beds? I have to get Justin ready for school." Help make the beds. My first task as a guest of my own family. Daniel got up from the table, kissed Linda on the forehead, and headed toward the door. "See you tonight." "Mom, behave yourself," he told me with that condescending smile he had perfected since he was a teenager. Behave yourself, as if I were a problematic child who needed supervision. I poured myself coffee and sat at the table where the crumbs of Daniel breakfast still were. Linda had put the dirty plate in the sink, along with the cup and silverware, waiting, obviously, for me to take charge of washing them. It was my first morning in her house, and she was already establishing the rules. I was the unpaid housekeeper, the one who got up to clean what others dirtied. Justin came running down the stairs with his school uniform put on wrong and his shoes untied. "Grandma, can you make me breakfast? Mom says she is very busy," Linda shouted from the bedroom. "Justin, tell your grandma to make you pancakes and not to forget to make your lunch. Not to forget." As if preparing Justin breakfast and lunch was a responsibility I had automatically accepted by moving into this house. As if being a grandmother meant becoming the servant of my own grandchildren. While I prepared Justin pancakes, I remembered the mornings in my own house. I got up when I wanted. I ate what I craved. I watered my plants in peace and silence. I had my routines, my schedules, my peace. Now my day started at 5:30 with other people noises, and by 7 I already had a list of tasks to fulfill to earn the right to keep living here. Justin ate his pancakes in silence, checking something on his tablet. "Thanks, Grandma," he mumbled without looking up. Linda came running down, putting on makeup while she walked. "Is Justin lunch ready?" She checked the lunchbox I had prepared with the efficiency of a supervisor. It is fine. Justin, let us go. We are late." They headed toward the door without saying goodbye. Justin stopped at the last moment and yelled at me. "Grandma, when I get back from school, can you help me with homework?" Another task on my list for the day, another responsibility that no one had consulted me if I wanted to assume. When they left, I stayed alone in the kitchen with the dirty breakfast dishes. The house was silent for the first time since I had arrived. I sat at the table and looked around. This kitchen was nice, modern, with new appliances and wooden cabinets. Daniel and Linda had managed to have a comfortable life. The problem was that now I was part of that life as the family maid, not as the respected matriarch I should be at my age. I started washing the dishes, and my thoughts flew to my own kitchen. My old but reliable stove, where I had cooked thousands of meals for Daniel when he was a child. My refrigerator that knew every noise, every vibration. My pantry where I kept the spices in jars Michael had brought me from his work trips. All that now belonged to Mr. Robert Henderson, who would probably change everything to adapt the house to his own tastes. My 40 years of domestic history erased with a stroke of a pen. After washing the dishes, Linda had left a list on the table. "Pending for Mrs. Emily," said the header, as if I were her employee and she my boss. The list included vacuuming the living room, cleaning the bathrooms, preparing lunch, ironing Daniel clothes, and having Justin snack ready for when he returned from school. A full workday without pay, without days off, without the right to have an opinion on working conditions. I took the list and crumpled it. Then I uncrumpled it and read it again. When had I accepted this agreement? When had I signed a contract where in exchange for a roof over my head, I had to become the servant of my own family? Daniel had told me I was going to live with them. Not that I was going to work for them, but apparently in Linda mind, the two things were synonyms when it came to homeless elderly people. I went up to my little room and took out the shoebox where I kept Michael letters. Linda had been right about one thing. The papers were yellowed by time, but the words remained the same. "My dear Emily," began the first letter. Every day I spend away from you is a lost day. I dream of the moment we have our own house, where you are the queen and I the king of our little kingdom. Our little kingdom. That had been our house for 40 years, and now I was a refugee in foreign territory. In another letter, Michael wrote to me about his plans for our family. We are going to have beautiful children, and we are going to teach them the value of work, of respect, of gratitude. Our son is going to take care of us when we are old, because that is how a real family works. How wrong my poor Michael had been. Our son had learned the value of money over respect. He had understood that older people were burdens instead of treasures to care for. I went down to the living room with the vacuum. It was a nice house. I could not deny that. Linda had good taste in decorating, although everything was too modern for my taste. Family photos in silver frames, beige leather furniture, a huge television dominating the whole wall. On the shelf there was a photo of Daniel and Linda wedding, another of Justin at his first communion, several of birthdays and celebrations. But there was not a single photo of me or Michael. It was as if Daniel family had started the day he married Linda, while I vacuumed. I found a photo that had fallen behind an armchair. It was of Daniel when he was 12 years old, the day he won a math contest at school. Michael and I were by his sides, smiling proudly, hugging him. I remembered that day perfectly. Daniel had been nervous all week before the contest, and I had been helping him practice every night after dinner. When he won, he ran toward us shouting, "Mom, Dad, I won. You are the best parents in the world, the best parents in the world." Those had been his words when he was 12 years old. When had that perception changed? When had he decided that Michael and I had gone from being the best parents in the world to being nuisances to get rid of? I put the photo in my purse. It was one of the few pieces of evidence left that we had once been a happy family, that Daniel had once seen me as his hero instead of his burden. The doorbell interrupted me. It was an older lady, maybe my age, who lived in the house next door. "Excuse me, is Linda in?" I told her she was not. "Ah, you must be Daniel, Mom. I am Betty. I live here next door." She invited me to have coffee at her house, for the first time in 2 days. Someone treated me like a normal human being, not like a problematic older person who needed constant supervision. Betty House was cozy, full of plants and family photographs. We sat in her kitchen and she served me coffee in fine china cups. "How are you adapting to living with your son?" she asked me. The question was simple, but the answer was so complicated I did not know where to start. "It is different," I told her finally. Betty nodded with understanding. "Children these days are not like before." "Right. My daughter also wanted me to go live with her when my husband died." "And did you go?" I asked. Betty smiled. "For 3 months. The 3 most miserable months of my life. They had me as a maid, taking care of the grandkids all day, cooking, cleaning. One day my daughter told me I was very lucky that they took care of me, that many people my age were alone in nursing homes. She stayed silent for a moment. That same night I went back to my house. My daughter got very angry, said I was ungrateful. How could I reject her help? But I prefer to be alone in my own house than accompanied in a house where I am not welcome." Her words hit me like a slap of reality. Alone in her own house. I no longer had that option. Did I? Daniel had sold my house. I had nowhere to return to. "The problem," Betty continued, "is that children believe they have the right to make decisions for us when we reach a certain age. As if turning 70 automatically turns us into children who need guardians." Exactly. That was the feeling I had had since I arrived at Daniel House. I had gone from being an independent adult to being a minor under guardianship. I returned to Daniel House with a clearer mind. Betty had given me something invaluable, the perspective of someone who had gone through the same thing and found a way out. I finished the tasks on Linda list with mechanical efficiency. But for the first time since I had arrived, I did not feel resigned. I felt like someone who was planning her next move. Linda arrived at noon with grocery bags. "Did you finish everything on the list?" Mrs. Emily. She checked the house with a critical eye, looking for something to criticize. It is fine. Although tomorrow I am going to teach you how I like Daniel's shirts ironed. You iron them a little differently. 40 years ironing Michael and Daniel's shirts. And now it turns out I had been doing it wrong all this time because I did not follow Linda quality standards. Justin arrived from school shouting, "Grandma, is my snack ready?" I had prepared grilled cheese sandwiches, which were his favorite food when he was smaller. "Oh, Grandma, I do not like grilled cheese anymore. Are there no cookies?" There were no cookies because Linda had not put cookies on her grocery list. But apparently that was my fault too. "Mom always has cookies for when I get home from school," Justin complained. "Mom always has cookies." As if I were a defective replacement for his mother, not his grandmother trying to spoil him. "Justin, help me with homework," I told him, trying to change the subject. "I cannot." "Grandma, Mom says kids my age need help from people who understand modern math." Modern math? The multiplication tables I had taught his father apparently no longer served the new generation. Linda had managed to convince even Justin that I was too old, too outdated to be useful in his education. Daniel arrived from work in a bad mood. "What is for dinner?" was the first thing he said. Linda pointed toward the stove. "Your mom made stewed chicken." Your mom. I was not mom anymore when she addressed Daniel. I was your mom, as if I were an object that belonged to him and that he had brought to this house to function as a maid. Daniel tasted the food and frowned. "It is very salty." It was not salty. It was exactly how he liked it when he was a child. But apparently his tastes had also evolved along with his contempt for me. During dinner, Linda told Daniel about her plans to remodel the kitchen. "With the money from the house sale and what Mrs. Emily has saved, we can put an island in the center and change all the cabinets. What Mrs. Emily has saved." They had already decided that my $300,000 were part of their family budget. I was sitting right there eating with them and they talked about my money as if I could not hear them. "Did you ask for prices yet?" Daniel was clearly excited with the idea of spending my savings. "Yes. The man who gave us a quote said that with $400,000 we can do a complete remodel. It will look perfect. $400,000. They had magically inflated my savings account by $100,000. Or maybe they were planning for me to contribute my $300,000 and they put the other $100,000 from the money from my house sale. Either way, they had already spent my money before asking me. That night, lying in my bed next to the noisy laundry room, I took out the savings book again. Indeed, it had $325,000. Money I had gathered dollar by dollar for 20 years, renting the small apartment Michael had left me in the center of town. An apartment they did not know existed because they had never bothered to ask me what other properties Michael had left in the will. Michael had been smarter than Daniel gave him credit for. He knew that someday his son might need money. But he also knew it was important for me to have my own financial security. That is why he had put the apartment solely in my name, without mentioning Daniel as an heir. If something happens to me, he had told me, "That apartment is your security. Emily, never be left without options." Options. That was the key word. Michael had left me options, and until now, I had not considered using them. The next day, while Linda and Justin were out, I called Mr. Robert Henderson from the house phone. I explained who I was and asked if we could talk. "Of course. Mrs. Emily. In fact, I have some questions about the house I would like to ask you." We agreed to meet at a downtown cafe that afternoon. I did not tell Linda or Daniel about the appointment. Something told me it was important to keep that conversation private. Robert Henderson turned out to be a gentler man than I had thought. He told me he had bought the house because he wanted something in a quiet neighborhood for his mother, who was also a widow. "When I saw you the day of the purchase," he told me, "you reminded me a lot of my mom. That is why I wanted to talk to you, to make sure you are okay." I briefly told him my situation, without going into details about how I felt at Daniel House. "Mrs. Emily, Robert told me after listening to me, I have to tell you something important. When your son sold me the house, something did not add up. He signed all the papers as if he were the sole owner. But when I checked the original documents in the public registry, the property is solely in your name. Your son had no legal right to sell it. My suspicions were confirmed. Daniel had sold a house that was not his. He had forged my signature on the sales documents. "What does that mean?" I asked him. Robert sighed. "It means that legally, the sale is void. You are still the owner of that house, and I technically have no right to live there." He stayed silent for a moment. "But it also means your son committed fraud, and that is a serious crime." The information overwhelmed me. Daniel had not only betrayed me by selling my house, he had committed a crime to do it. I do not want to get him in trouble. I told Robert. He smiled sadly. "Mrs. Emily, he got himself in trouble. The question is what we are going to do about it." He proposed a solution I had not considered. He could stay in the house paying me a monthly rent while I decided what to do with Daniel and Linda. "It would be as if I were your tenant," he explained. "You recover your assets. I have a place to live, and your son learns he cannot dispose of what is not his." I returned to Daniel House that afternoon with a new sensation in my chest, for the first time in days. I felt I had control over something. Robert had given me not only valuable information, but real options. I could get my house back. I could have monthly income. I could teach Daniel a lesson he would never forget. The only thing I had to decide was when and how I was going to act. Linda received me at the door with a fake smile. "Where had you been?" "Mrs. Emily, I was looking for you to help me with some things." Help with some things. The euphemism she used to say she wanted me to work for free in her house. I went downtown. I told her simply. It was not a lie, and it was not the whole truth either. Linda frowned. "Downtown? For what?" As if I needed her permission to leave the house. As if I were a teenager who had to report all her movements. "To walk," I answered. Technically true. I had walked several blocks from the bus stop to the cafe where I met Robert. Linda did not seem satisfied with the answer, but did not insist. "Well, tomorrow I do need you to stay because some men are coming to give a quote for the kitchen remodel. Quote for the remodel. With my money. Of course." That night, Daniel arrived later than usual. He had been drinking, which was not common for him. He sat at the kitchen table with a beer and looked at me with that expression he put on when he wanted to talk about something serious. "Mom, Linda and I have been thinking. You have all that saved money and we have important expenses." There came the formal request. The moment they were going to officially ask me to finance their remodel, what kind of expenses I asked. Although I knew the answer perfectly, Daniel took a sip of beer. "The kitchen is very old. Mom, we need to modernize it, and Justin is going to need money for his school activities next year. Important expenses. A kitchen remodel and Justin's school activities, as if those were emergencies that justified using my life savings. Daniel," I told him carefully, "that money is my security. It is all I have." He sighed impatiently. "Mom, you do not need security anymore. You live here with us. We take care of everything. Your money is better invested in improving the house where you live now, where I live now, as if this house were my permanent home, as if I had renounced forever the right to make my own decisions about my future." "Let me think about it," I told him. Daniel smiled, interpreting my answer as a victory. "Of course. Mom, take your time. But remember that the sooner we start the remodel, the sooner we are all going to be more comfortable. All more comfortable. With my money financing their comfort, while I kept sleeping in the room next to the laundry, working as an unpaid maid." That early morning, while listening to the familiar noise of the washing machine, I made the final decision. Daniel and Linda had crossed all possible lines. They had sold my house illegally. They had planned to spend my savings without consulting me. They had turned me into their servant and now asked me to thank them for the privilege of being exploited by my own family. But they had forgotten something important. I also knew how to play dirty when necessary. The next day, I was going to start moving the pieces on the board. Robert Henderson was going to be my unintentional ally. My savings were going to be my secret weapon, and my apartment downtown was going to be my escape. Daniel and Linda had gravely underestimated Emily Hope, and now they were going to discover exactly how much that calculation error was going to cost them at 5 in the morning when the whole house slept. I got up with a mental clarity I had not felt in weeks. I put on my blue dress, the one Michael had given me for our 20th anniversary, and quietly left the house. The sun was barely starting to rise, and the streets were empty. I walked to the bus stop with my important papers in my purse. Today I was going to start reclaiming my life, and no one was going to stop me. My first stop was the bank. When they opened the doors at 8 in the morning, I was already waiting in line. I explained to the manager that I needed full access to my savings account, and that I wanted to open a new account at a different branch. "Is there any problem with your current account, Mrs. Emily?" he asked me. "No," I replied with a smile. "I simply want more privacy in my financial affairs." The manager nodded with understanding. People my age often had to protect themselves from ambitious relatives. I transferred $200,000 to the new account and left only $125,000 in the original account. If Daniel and Linda wanted to check my finances, they would find a considerably smaller amount than they expected. The remaining $200,000 would be safe in an account that only I knew, at a branch on the other side of town. My first move had been perfect, protecting my resources without them suspecting anything. My second stop was with a lawyer. Robert Henderson had recommended his cousin Arthur, who specialized in real estate fraud. Arthur reviewed all the documents I brought and confirmed what Robert had told me. Daniel had committed a crime by selling my house without authorization. "Mrs. Emily," Arthur told me, "you have several options. You can annul the sale, sue your son for fraud, or reach a private agreement. What do you prefer?" The question was complex. How far was I willing to go to teach Daniel a lesson? I do not want to put my son in jail. I explained to Arthur, but I also cannot allow him to believe he can dispose of my assets as if they were his. Arthur smiled. He was an older man, probably had seen many cases like mine. "I understand perfectly. I propose something. We make an agreement where your son acknowledges the sale was invalid. You recover ownership of the house, and Mr. Henderson becomes your tenant paying monthly rent. Your son returns the money he received for the sale, and nobody goes to jail. But he learns his actions have consequences. The plan was perfect. Daniel would have to face the reality that he had sold something that did not belong to him, return the sale money, and watch me recover not only my house, but also a source of monthly income. How much could I charge for rent? I asked Arthur. A house like yours, in that area, is easily worth $5,000 a month. But considering the special circumstances, we could start with $4,000 monthly, more money than Daniel earned in his sales job. My third stop was at the real estate office where my tenant of the downtown apartment worked. Mr. Lewis had been renting that apartment from me for 15 years, always punctual with his payments. When I explained that I needed to recover the apartment, he showed understanding. "Mrs. Emily, is there a family problem?" Mr. Lewis knew me enough to guess that something was not right. "Let us say I need my independence back," I answered. "I give you a month to find another place. Obviously, I help with the moving expenses." Mr. Lewis accepted without problems the truth. "Mrs. Emily, I had already been thinking of buying something of my own. This is a good time." We agreed that in 3 weeks he would vacate the apartment and I could move back in. My plan was taking shape. In less than a month, I would have my own home again, monthly income from the rent of my original house, and Daniel and Linda facing the consequences of their decisions. I returned to Daniel's house around noon. Linda was in the kitchen with 2 men who were obviously the contractors coming to give the quote for the remodel. When they saw me enter, Linda introduced me. "She is my husband, Mom. She is going to collaborate with the financing of the project." Collaborate with the financing. As if I had voluntarily accepted to be her partner in the business of spending my money. "Nice to meet you." "Ma'am," the contractor said. One of them asked me, "What type of kitchen would you like, modern, rustic, minimalist?" The question took me by surprise. Linda answered for me. "Mrs. Emily likes everything simple. The important thing is that it is functional for the whole family." Everything simple. As if my tastes were so basic, it was not worth consulting me on the details of how they were going to spend my savings. After the contractors left, Linda sat with me in the living room. "Mrs. Emily, the men said they can start next week if we make the deposit. We need $150,000 to start." $150,000, almost half the savings they believed I had. "It is a lot of money," I told her. Linda nodded understandingly. "Yes, but think about how pretty the kitchen is going to look, and it is going to increase the value of the house." Increase the value of the house. Her house. Not mine. I was going to finance an improvement that would only benefit them. "Linda," I told her carefully, "I need to think about it well. It is an important decision." Linda frowned slightly. "What is there to think about? You are going to live here. You are going to use the kitchen every day. It is an investment in your own comfort." My own comfort. As if sleeping in the room next to the laundry was the pinnacle of luxury I deserved at my age. Daniel arrived that afternoon more excited than usual. Linda had already told him about the visit from the contractors. "Mom, did you see the plans they left? It is going to look beautiful. Linda has very good taste for these things." Linda has good taste. Of course, she was the decoration expert who was going to supervise the spending of my money. "Daniel," I told him, "I want to talk to you in private." Linda withdrew reluctantly, clearly annoyed at being excluded from a conversation about a project she had planned. We sat in the backyard, far from Linda ears. "Son," I began, "I have been thinking a lot about everything that has happened lately." Daniel tensed immediately. What do you mean he knew perfectly what I meant? But wanted me to put the cards on the table first, the sale of the house, my move here, the plans to spend my savings. Daniel sighed, as if he were tired of discussing the subject. "Mom, I thought we had already cleared all that up. You are better here with us, and the money is better invested in improvements for the house, where you live now, where I live now." Again that phrase that reduced my existence to being a permanent guest in foreign territory. "Daniel, did you sign the sale papers?" The question made him nervous immediately. "Of course. Mom, someone had to sign. And you?" "Well, you were not in conditions to take that decision. Not in conditions. As if I were a senile old woman incapable of handling my own affairs. And did you not think it was important to ask me before selling my house?" Daniel got up, clearly agitated. "Mom, let us not start with this again. The decision is already made. The house is already sold. There is no turning back. There is no turning back." Those were his exact words. How ironic that soon he was going to discover that there was turning back, and that turning back was going to be very expensive for him. That night, while we were having dinner, Justin asked me something that broke my heart. "Grandma, why did you sell your house?" "My friend Rodrigo says only poor people sell their houses." Linda silenced him immediately. "Justin, do not ask silly questions. Your grandma sold the house because it was already too big for her alone." Justin insisted. "But why could we not go visit you at your house like before I liked your garden?" Justin liked my garden. My 8-year-old grandson understood something his parents had decided to ignore, that my house was special, that it had sentimental value, that it represented something more than sellable square footage. "Justin," I told him softly, "sometimes adults make decisions they think are correct, but that actually hurt the people they love." Daniel shot me a warning look, but I continued, "Your grandma is learning to adapt, but that does not mean she is happy with everything that has happened." Linda changed the subject abruptly. "Justin, tell your grandma about the science project you have to do." Justin cheered up immediately. He was a smart boy, and when he talked about his studies, he reminded me of the Daniel child who had been my pride. "I have to make a model of the solar system. Grandma, can you help me?" The request moved me. Finally, something where my age and experience were seen as valuable resources instead of obstacles. After dinner, Justin and I sat at the dining table to plan his project. While we drew the planets on paper, he told me things about school, about his friends, about his dreams. "Grandma," he told me at one point, Is it true that when you were young there was no television? I explained how the world was when I was his age, and saw in his eyes the same fascination Daniel had shown when he was a child, at some point in the last 30 years. Daniel had lost that capacity for wonder, that curiosity for the stories of his elders. The next day, while Linda was at work and Justin at school, I received a call from Arthur, the lawyer. "Mrs. Emily, the legal document is ready. When do you want me to deliver it to your son?" The question paralyzed me momentarily. Once Daniel received those papers, there would be no turning back in our relationship. He would know I had discovered his fraud, that I had taken legal measures, that I was no longer the helpless old woman he thought he could manipulate. "Arthur," I told him, "I want you to deliver them tomorrow afternoon, when he is at his job. Let his co-workers see how a lawyer came looking for him. Let him feel the public shame of facing the consequences of his acts." Arthur laughed softly. "Mrs. Emily, I like your style. Tomorrow at 3 in the afternoon, I am at his office." Perfect. Daniel was going to have the scare of his life when he saw a lawyer arrive with documents proving his fraud. That afternoon, Linda arrived with more kitchen catalogs. "Mrs. Emily, I found some beautiful designs. Did you decide on the financing?" The insistence on the subject confirmed to me that they had taken for granted I was going to pay for the remodel. "Linda, I have been thinking, and I think it is better to wait a little before making such a big investment." Linda looked confused. "Wait. Why?" "The men said if we do not reserve the date, we have to wait until next month, because $150,000 is a lot of money, and I want to be sure it is the best decision." Linda sat next to me with that forced patience she used when trying to explain something she considered obvious. "Mrs. Emily, you are going to live here for the rest of your life. This investment is going to benefit the whole family, including you, for the rest of my life." The phrase that enclosed her entire strategy, convincing me this was my final destiny, that I no longer had options, that the best I could do was finance my own comfort in her house. "Linda," I told her with a calm that surprised myself, "the money is mine, and I am going to decide when and how to spend it, for the first time since I had arrived at this house." I saw a flash of real anger in Linda's eyes. "Of course the money is yours." "Mrs. Emily, nobody is saying otherwise, but I also believed you understood that now we form a family, and in families resources are shared, sharing resources. The perfect euphemism to justify the legal theft of my savings." That night, Daniel arrived in a very bad mood. Linda had already told him about my refusal to immediately finance the remodel. "Mom, Linda tells me you do not want to cooperate with the kitchen." "What is happening?" His tone was accusatory, as if I were a rebellious child behaving badly. "Daniel, I just want to take my time to think things over." Daniel poured himself a beer and sat in front of me with that expression he put on when preparing for a confrontation. "Mom, I do not understand what the problem is. You are going to live here. You are going to use the kitchen. You are going to benefit from the improvements. Why are you putting up obstacles?" Obstacles. Wanting control over my own savings was putting obstacles to his plans. "Besides," Daniel continued, "with what it costs to maintain your old house, this money is better invested here. At least here the benefit will be seen. Maintaining my old house, as if 40 years of family history were simply an unnecessary expense that had to be eliminated." "Daniel," I said, getting up from the table, "tomorrow you are going to understand many things you do not understand today." I left the sentence in the air and went to my room. Daniel remained seated, clearly confused by my cryptic answer, but too angry to keep asking. Linda mumbled something about older people being stubborn, but I could not hear everything she said. In my room, I took out a sheet of paper and wrote a letter I had planned for days. "Daniel and Linda," I wrote. "By the time you read this, I will no longer be living in this house. I discovered some things about the sale of my house that forced me to take legal measures. A lawyer is going to contact you to explain the situation. Do not take this as an act of revenge, but as a lesson on the consequences of making decisions about other people's lives without consulting them. Emily Hope." I put the letter in an envelope and put it inside my purse. Tomorrow. After Arthur visited Daniel at his job, I was going to disappear from this house as silently as I had arrived. But unlike when I arrived, now I had control of the situation. I had options. I had resources. I had a plan. Daniel and Linda had played with me thinking I was a helpless old woman. Tomorrow they were going to discover exactly who Emily Hope was when she decided to fight for her dignity, that early morning, while listening for the last time to the noise of the laundry. I mentally reviewed all the moves I had made in the last few days. I had protected my savings. I had legally recovered my house. I had secured my economic independence and had prepared a lesson Daniel would never forget. In a few hours. The power dynamic in this family was going to change forever. At 6 in the morning, when Linda started making noise in the kitchen preparing Daniel breakfast, I was already completely dressed and ready. I put on my blue dress again, packed my few belongings in a small suitcase, and put the important documents in my purse. The 3 cardboard boxes stayed. Everything in them were objects I could replace. What I was taking was much more valuable: my recovered dignity, my restored independence, and the knowledge that never again was I going to allow anyone to decide for me how to live my life. When Daniel and Linda went to work and Justin to school, I was going to leave this house through the front door, with my head high, like the owner of my own destiny I had become again. The woman who had built a house with her own hands was not going to allow anyone to turn her into a refugee in her own family. Emily Hope was back, and this time she came prepared for war. At 9 in the morning, when the house finally remained empty, I took my small suitcase and walked toward the front door. For the first time in weeks, I was leaving that house without having to explain to anyone where I was going or when I would return. The feeling of freedom was so intense that for a moment I stopped at the threshold, breathing the fresh morning air. Emily Hope was leaving this house as she had arrived, with dignity, but this time by her own decision. I left the letter on the dining table, exactly where Linda put her daily task lists for me. There was a certain poetic justice in using that same place for my farewell. Next to the letter, I left the keys Linda had given me so I would feel at home. How ironic that the keys that supposedly gave me belonging were actually symbols of my prison. Now I returned them as the first declaration of my recovered independence. The taxi I had called was waiting outside. The driver, a gentleman my age named Henry, helped me with the suitcase. "Everything good?" "Ma'am," he asked me, noticing perhaps the mix of nerves and determination on my face. "Yes," I answered him. "Today I start a new stage of my life." Henry smiled. "That is good. Ma'am, at our age we still have many stages to live." He was right. Daniel and Linda had made the mistake of assuming that at 72 years old, I no longer had more chapters to write. While the taxi moved away from Daniel House, I allowed myself to feel a mix of sadness and liberation. Sadness because my relationship with my son would never be the same again, but liberation because I was no longer going to live subjected to the condescending charity of my own family. The downtown apartment awaited me, clean and empty, ready to be my home again. Mr. Lewis had been efficient with the move, and the keys were waiting for me at the real estate agency just as we had agreed. When I opened the apartment door, silence received me like a hug. It was not the oppressive silence of loneliness, but the chosen silence of peace. My steps resonated on the wooden floors Michael had installed so many years ago. The walls needed painting, the windows a deep cleaning, but it was mine. Every corner, every imperfection, every ray of sun entering through the east window. Nobody was going to give me task lists. Nobody was going to supervise my rest. Nobody was going to plan to spend my savings without consulting me. I spent the whole morning walking through the apartment, remembering the years Michael and I had lived there before moving to the house. It was our first home as a married couple, the place where we had dreamed of the future, where we had planned to build our own house after Michael died. I had decided to rent it instead of selling it because I could not get rid of so much history. How fortunate that decision had been. That apartment had become my salvation. My anchor in the sea of changes Daniel and Linda had unleashed in my life. At 3 in the afternoon sharp, my phone rang. It was Arthur. "Mrs. Emily, mission accomplished. Your son just received the documents. You should see his face. He told me Daniel had been in a meeting with clients when the legal notification arrived. His co-workers had witnessed everything. The arrival of the lawyer, the delivery of documents, the explanation that he had illegally sold a property that was not his. His boss asked him to leave early to resolve his personal affairs. Arthur informed me, "I think your son is starting to understand the gravity of the situation." Perfect. Daniel was experiencing the public humiliation I had felt the day he sold my house. His co-workers knew he had committed fraud, his boss questioned his professional integrity, and now he had to face the legal consequences of his decisions. It was not revenge. It was justice. It was the lesson he should have learned a long time ago about respecting other people's rights, especially those of his own mother. An hour later, the phone in my apartment started ringing. It was Daniel, clearly desperate. "Mom, where are you? I arrived at the house and you are not here. What does all this about the lawyer mean?" His voice trembled between confusion and panic. "Daniel." I answered him with the calm that surprised myself. "It means I discovered you sold my house illegally. It means you forged my signature on legal documents. It means you committed fraud." The silence on the other side of the phone lasted several seconds. "Mom, I just wanted you to be safe, to have a place to live." Daniel had lost all the arrogance of the previous days. He was no longer the son explaining patiently why his decisions were better than mine. He was an adult man, realizing he had made a very serious mistake. "Daniel," I interrupted him, "you did not want me to be safe. You wanted my money to remodel your kitchen and thought if you took my house away, I would have no other option but to give it to you. That is not true. We were going to take care of you. We were going to give you everything you needed." His defense sounded desperate, as if he himself were realizing how weak his argument was. "Daniel, you turned me into your maid. You gave me a room next to the laundry and a daily list of tasks to fulfill. That is not taking care of someone. That is exploiting someone." The truth of my words resonated in the telephone silence. Daniel knew I was right, and could not deny it. "Mom, where are you? Let us talk. Let us fix all this. Fix all this." As if 30 years of disrespect could be fixed with a conversation. "Daniel, the lawyer already explained what you have to do. You have to return the money you received for the sale of my house, and I recover my property. It is very simple." Daniel started stammering something about not having all the money available, about having made expenses, about committing to the kitchen contractors. "That was your responsibility to think about before selling something that was not yours." I replied, "You have 30 days to return the money, according to what the legal document says. If you cannot do it, Mr. Henderson and I will have to consider other legal options." The implicit threat was clear. If he did not return the money voluntarily, we could proceed with criminal charges for fraud. Daniel understood the message perfectly. Linda took the phone. Her voice had lost all the fake sweetness she used with me. "Mrs. Emily, how can you do this to us? We are your family. How can you prefer a stranger over us?" The question was so absurd it almost made me laugh. "Linda, you were the ones who chose the stranger. You were the ones who sold my house to Robert Henderson without consulting me. I am simply recovering what was always mine." Linda started crying, or at least simulating she was crying. "But we love you." "Mrs. Emily, everything we did was because we love you." Linda, I told her with a firmness that even impressed me, "If this is how you show love, I prefer to live without it." I hung up the phone and disconnected it immediately. I was not going to allow them to bombard me with calls full of emotional manipulation and false promises. I had already fallen into that trap once, when I believed moving with them was best for everyone. I was not going to make the same mistake again. My apartment phone did not stop ringing. I kept it disconnected the rest of the day. I took advantage of the time to go shopping, something I had not been able to do freely in weeks. I went to the supermarket and bought exactly what I wanted to eat, without having to consult Linda tastes or Daniel preferences. I bought flowers to decorate the table, something Linda considered an unnecessary expense. I bought my favorite cookies, which Justin had disdained for being for older people. That night, I prepared the dinner I wanted, chicken soup with fresh vegetables, exactly how I liked it. I ate in silence, watching the sunset from my window, savoring every spoonful of my recovered freedom. There was no washing machine noise, there was no television at excessive volume. There were no conversations about expenses and budgets to remodel kitchens with my money, only the chosen silence of a woman who had decided to live on her own terms. The next day, Robert Henderson came to visit me. He brought a lease agreement already drafted, and a proposal that pleasantly surprised me. Mrs. Emily, I have been thinking about our situation. Your house is beautiful, but it is too big for a single person. What do you think if I rent the whole thing for $5,000 a month? But you can use the master bedroom whenever you want. That way you have your apartment here downtown and also access to your original house when you feel like it. The proposal was perfect. $5,000 monthly guaranteed income, plus the possibility of visiting my house when I missed the garden or wanted to remember happy times with Michael. It seems excellent to me, I replied, but there is a condition. If my son does not return the money in 30 days, you can proceed legally against him. Robert nodded. He was a businessman. He understood contracts had to be fulfilled. By the way, Robert told me before leaving, yesterday afternoon your son arrived at the house asking for you. He was very upset. I explained you no longer lived there and that now I was the legal tenant. I think he finally understood he had lost both the house and his mother. Robert's words confirmed to me that Daniel was starting to grasp the real consequences of his actions. It was no longer just a legal or financial problem. It was the loss of his relationship with me. 3 days later, Justin appeared at my apartment door. Linda had brought him, but stayed waiting in the car. Justin had been crying. It was obvious. Grandma, why did you leave? Mom says you are angry with us. The question broke my heart. Justin was innocent in this whole situation, but inevitably he was going to suffer the consequences of his parents' decisions. Justin, I told him, kneeling to be at his height, I am not angry with you. I could never be angry with you. Then why do not you live with us? Mom says you preferred living alone than with your family. The words were clearly Linda, but came out of my grandson mouth. Justin, sometimes adults make decisions that hurt other people. Your parents took decisions about my life without asking me, and that hurt me a lot. Justin hugged me tight. Grandma, are you not going to help me with my homework anymore? The question made me smile despite everything. Of course, my love. You can come visit me whenever you want. Justin stayed an hour with me. We finished the solar system project we had started at Daniel House, while we pasted the planets on poster board. He told me his parents had been arguing a lot at home, that his mom cried at night, that his dad arrived late from work and locked himself in his room. Children are always the first to feel when a family is falling apart, even if they do not understand exactly what is happening. Grandma, Justin told me before leaving, are you and Dad going to speak again someday? The question was impossible to answer honestly. Justin, your dad has to learn some important things about how to treat the people he loves. When he learns them, maybe we can talk again. Justin nodded with the seriousness only children can have when trying to understand the adult world. Linda did not get out of the car when she came to pick up Justin. She waved at me from the distance, but her face showed a mix of shame and resentment. She was no longer the self-assured woman who had planned my future without consulting me. She was someone realizing she had gravely underestimated her adversary. Justin hugged me tight before leaving. I love you. Grandma, he whispered. I love you too. My beautiful grandson, I replied. A week later, Daniel appeared alone at my apartment. He looked tired, aged, as if the pressure of the last few days had added years to him. Mom, we need to talk. I invited him in, but did not offer him coffee. That small courtesy had to be earned again. We sat in the living room, and for the first time in years, Daniel seemed genuinely nervous in my presence. Mom, I am sorry. I know I was wrong. I know I should not have sold the house without asking you. It was a start, but it was not enough. Daniel, it is not just about the house. It is about how you treated me in your home. It is about how you plan to spend my savings without consulting me. It is about how you turned me into your maid and then told me I should be grateful." Daniel lowered his head. He knew I was right on every point. "Linda says you are never going to forgive us," Daniel continued. "She says you prefer to stay alone than give us a chance to fix things." Linda had been working on the emotional manipulation strategy using Daniel as a messenger. "Daniel," I replied, "I did not choose to stay alone. You chose to treat me as if I were a burden instead of treating me as your mother. The difference between being alone and being accompanied by people who do not respect me is that being alone is much better." Daniel stayed quiet for a long moment. What do I have to do to fix this? The question was direct. No beating around the bush. Maybe finally he was starting to understand the gravity of the situation. First, I told him, "You have to return the money you received for the sale of my house. Second, you have to apologize sincerely, not because it suits you, but because you really understand that what you did was wrong. Third, you have to accept that I am no longer going to live with you, that I have a right to my own independence, and if I do all that, are you going to talk to me again?" The question had a hint of hope that moved me despite everything. Daniel was still my son, the child I had raised, the man who had made terrible mistakes but maybe could learn from them. "Daniel, if you do all that because you really change your way of thinking, not because you want something from me, then we can start rebuilding our relationship. But it is going to be a different relationship. I am no longer going to be the mother who accepts everything without protesting." Daniel got up to leave. At the door, he stopped and asked me, "Mom, do you hate me?" The question hurt me more than I expected. "Daniel, I do not hate you. I am deeply disappointed in you, but I do not hate you. You are my son, and you always will be. But that does not mean I am going to allow you to treat me bad just because we are family." Daniel nodded and left without saying more. 2 weeks later, Arthur called me with good news. "Mrs. Emily, your son deposited the full money this morning. He also signed a document recognizing the sale was illegal and waiving any future claim on the property." Daniel had fulfilled the first part of the agreement. Now remained to see if the apologies and change of attitude were genuine or just a strategy to avoid major legal problems. That afternoon, I received a letter from Daniel. It was handwritten, on common paper, without pretensions. "Mom," it began, "I have had time to think about everything that happened, and I realize you were right about everything. Linda and I treated you as if you were an employee instead of treating you as our mother. We planned to spend your money as if it were ours. We took your house and then told you that you should be grateful. I have no excuses for any of that. I can only tell you I deeply regret it, and I understand if you never forgive me." The letter continued, "Justin misses you every day. He asks for you, wants to visit you, does not understand why his grandma left. Linda also regrets it, although she has a hard time admitting it. But I am not writing to ask you to come back with us. I am writing to ask for forgiveness, without expecting anything in return. You deserved much better from us, and I am sorry we took so long to realize." The letter was signed simply, "Daniel." That night, sitting in my apartment with the fresh flowers I had bought decorating the table, I read Daniel's letter several times. His words sounded sincere, but sincerity would have to be proven with time and with actions, not just with words written on paper. I had learned that people can say the right thing when they need something, but changing really requires much more than good intentions. I decided I was going to give Daniel the opportunity to demonstrate he had learned the lesson, but this time it would be a relationship on my terms, scheduled visits, mutual respect, recognition of my independence. I was no longer going to be the self-sacrificing mother who accepted everything without protesting. I was going to be Emily Hope, a 72-year-old woman who had learned it is never too late to demand the respect one deserves. The next day, I wrote a response letter to Daniel. "Son," I wrote, "I accept your apologies and I accept trying to rebuild our relationship. But it is going to be step by step. with mutual respect and with the understanding that I have the right to live my life as I consider best. You can bring Justin to visit me on Saturday afternoons. If he wants to come, we can start from there." It was a start, small but real. When I put the letter in the mailbox, I felt a mix of hope and caution. Maybe Daniel really had learned the lesson. Maybe our relationship could be saved. But if not, I was going to be okay. I had my home, I had my income, I had my dignity. I no longer depended on anyone else for my happiness or my security. Emily Hope had returned to be the owner of her own life, and that was the most important thing of all.